I thought I knew what rock bottom felt like until I read that text message. It was a Wednesday evening, the kind of midweek slog where you go through the motions, dinner, laundry, Netflix. My wife, Emily, was out running errands, though she'd been doing that a lot lately. I didn't think much of it. We'd been married for 12 years, and trust wasn't something I ever questioned. That night, as I sat on the couch scrolling through Reddit, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Emily never left her phone behind. Ever. Curiosity tugged at me. Maybe it was something innocent, but instinct told me otherwise. I hesitated. Snooping wasn't my style, but something felt off. I picked up her phone. No password. Either she was careless or too confident. The message on the screen was from Jason, my cousin. The same Jason who'd been at our last barbecue, laughing with our kids and offering to help fix our deck. Jason, can't stop thinking about last night. I miss you already. Same time tomorrow? My stomach twisted. I scrolled up. Messages. Photos. Inside jokes. Late-night confessions. The words blurred together. A sickening montage of betrayal. They weren't just having sex. They were having a relationship. I put the phone down, breathing hard, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a midlife crisis fling. This was something deeper. The front door creaked open, and there she was, Emily, my wife, the mother of my children, smiling like she hadn't just detonated our entire life. "Hey, babe," she said casually, tossing her keys on the counter. "What's for dinner?" I stared at her, my heart pounding, rage battling sorrow. In that moment, I realized two things. She didn't know I knew. I was going to make sure she felt what I was feeling, every last bit of it. I stood there, frozen, my mind spinning with everything I'd just seen. Emily breezed past me into the kitchen like nothing had happened, humming some stupid pop song as she started unpacking groceries. She acted so normal, so comfortable. It made my skin crawl. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to confront her right then and there. But anger can be blinding. I couldn't afford that, not yet. If I exploded now, she'd deny everything, spin it, twist it until I was the paranoid, insecure husband. No, I needed to be smart. "Hey," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "How was your day?" She turned and smiled, that same radiant smile I'd fallen for all those years ago. "Busy. Running around all day. You know how it is." "Yeah, I do," I thought bitterly. I helped her put away the groceries, nodding at all the right moments while mentally dissecting every word she said. Was she thinking about him right now? Did she picture Jason when she smiled like that? The thought made me nauseous. Later that night, as she showered, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at her phone. My hands trembled as I unlocked it again. More messages. More Jason. "Emily, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Jack has no clue. LOL. LOL. She was laughing at me. I scrolled further, piecing together the timeline. This hadn't just started. It had been going on for months. Business trips, late-night gym sessions, even that weekend when I took the kids camping so she could catch up on work. They'd used every stolen moment they could find. When she came out of the bathroom, toweling her hair dry, I was already under the covers, pretending to be half asleep. I felt the mattress dip as she climbed in next to me, her scent, a mix of lavender shampoo and something bitter now, invading my senses. "Love you," she whispered, brushing her fingers against mine. I stayed still, silent. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, but one rose above them all. How could she do this? But I already knew the answer. She could because she thought she'd never get caught. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, her breath slow and steady beside me. She slept so peacefully, like someone without a care in the world, like someone who hadn't shattered my life with a few careless messages. I waited until dawn before slipping out of bed, grabbing her phone from the dresser. I needed everything: dates, locations, details. If I was going to confront her, there couldn't be room for lies or excuses. In the dim glow of the screen, I scrolled through their texts again. My heart clenched as I saw photos of them together. Selfies at places she claimed were work meetings. His arm casually around her waist, their faces lit with the kind of happiness she hadn't shown around me in years. Did she ever love me at all? I kept digging, landing on one message that stopped me cold. Jason, I told you he's too dumb to figure this out. We've got nothing to worry about. Too dumb. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Was that what they thought of me? Some clueless idiot, too wrapped up in work and the kids to notice them sneaking around? I swiped to her email next, driven by a sick need to know everything. More lies. Flight confirmations for trips she'd never mentioned. Hotel reservations under her maiden name. Jason Winters listed as her emergency contact. I felt something inside me snap. Suddenly, there was movement upstairs. Our kids stirring awake. The innocent sound brought me crashing back to reality. This wasn't just about me anymore. They had no idea the foundation of their lives was built on lies. I locked her phone and put it back on the dresser, feeling like I'd aged 10 years in a single night. By the time Emily came downstairs, I was making pancakes, flipping them with mechanical precision. The kids were chattering at the table, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. "Smells amazing," she said brightly, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I forced myself not to recoil. "Thought I'd treat everyone today," I said evenly, handing her a plate. She smiled, thanking me, completely unaware that the man she'd betrayed was now watching her every move. As we ate breakfast together, I realized something. I couldn't just confront her and scream. That would be too easy for her. No, if she was going to burn everything we'd built, I was going to make damn sure she burned too. That entire weekend, I played the role of the doting husband, making breakfast, doing chores, even suggesting a family movie night. Emily acted normal, like a woman who didn't have a secret life. But I saw the cracks, small, almost imperceptible shifts. A little too much phone checking when she thought I wasn't looking. Quick, secretive smiles after reading certain texts. Once, I saw her typing furiously, only to lock her phone when she noticed me walking by. I let it all slide, biding my time. On Sunday, while she was in the shower, I went into full recon mode. Her phone was locked, but I'd already set up a backup the night before, syncing her messages and emails to an old laptop she didn't even know we still had. I dug deeper. Old chats, hidden folders, deleted photos. I found it all. I discovered that Jason wasn't just some reckless fling. He'd been part of her life, dinners, weekend trips, even stupid little date nights that she should have shared with me. And then, I found the worst one. It was a photo of the two of them at a cabin, a cozy, secluded spot in the mountains. She told me she was going on a girls' weekend with her old college roommate. Jason's arm was wrapped possessively around her waist, his lips pressed against her neck. The caption read, "Our little getaway. Just us." I stared at that image for what felt like hours, the anger simmering in my chest until it felt like molten steel. They'd built this twisted fantasy together, while I was home managing our lives. I could have smashed the laptop right then, but I forced myself to think. I couldn't afford recklessness, not yet. I transferred everything to a secure drive and locked it away. Evidence was power, and I needed all of it. That afternoon, while Emily was out running errands again, I made my first move. I called Nick, my best friend since college, a lawyer with a sharp mind and zero tolerance for bullshit. We hadn't spoken much in recent months, life getting in the way, but when he heard my voice, he immediately knew something was wrong. "Jack? You good, man?" I exhaled slowly, forcing back the emotion threatening to choke me. "No, I'm not." Without hesitating, he said, "Talk to me." I told him everything. The messages, the photos, the cabin, even Jason. Nick listened without interrupting, his voice steady when he finally spoke. "You want a divorce?" I paused. Divorce? The word felt premature. "Not yet," I admitted. "I need more. I can't let her walk away clean." "Then you're going to need a plan," he said. "A smart one." We spent the next hour crafting the foundation of what would come next, a strategy that would hit Emily exactly where she thought she was safest. By the time I hung up, I felt clear, focused, ready. Emily thought she was playing me for a fool, but she'd forgotten one critical thing. I played to win. The first move was subtle, too subtle for Emily to notice. I opened a separate bank account, transferring small amounts from our joint account, just enough to avoid suspicion. Nick helped me draft a financial strategy, securing assets, freezing potential liabilities, and quietly consulting a divorce lawyer. Emily had no idea I was preparing for war. 2 weeks passed. I played the part of the loving husband perfectly, making dinner, helping the kids with homework, suggesting date nights, things I hadn't done in years. It worked like a charm. Emily seemed relieved, but I could tell she was still seeing Jason. The late-night texts hadn't stopped, and her work errands were becoming more frequent. Then came the slip-up. One Friday night, she was unusually jumpy. After dinner, she claimed she needed to run to the pharmacy, a quick errand. Normally, I'd let it slide, but this time, I followed her. I stayed 3 cars back, heart pounding with adrenaline. She drove across town, not to the pharmacy, but to a small, dimly lit bar we'd been to once on a date years ago. Jason was already there, waiting at the corner booth like he owned the place. He stood when he saw her, grinning like the smug bastard he was. She threw her arms around his neck, kissing him like a woman completely unburdened by guilt. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Breathe. I snapped a few photos, making sure to capture the intimacy, the kind of damning evidence no lawyer could argue away. They sat close, heads together, laughing. Watching them felt like swallowing broken glass. The betrayal hit deeper than I expected, despite all my preparation. But I couldn't fall apart, not yet. The next morning, I called Nick. He answered on the first ring. "They're still seeing each other," I said, my voice cold and detached. "Did you get proof?" "More than enough." There was a pause before he asked, "You ready for the next step?" I clenched my jaw. "Yes." Nick laid out the plan. Step 1. Blow up Jason's life. I didn't want to just end the affair. I wanted to destroy everything he cared about. Jason had a wife, Rachel. I remembered her vaguely from family gatherings, always polite and soft-spoken. She had no idea her husband was a lying, cheating piece of trash. She deserved to know, but telling her outright wouldn't be enough. No, I needed her to see what I saw, to feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal that had kept me awake night after night. That evening, I created a fake email account and composed a simple message. Subject: You deserve the truth. Rachel, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your husband, Jason, has been having an affair with my wife, Emily. This isn't speculation, it's fact. I've attached photos, messages, and emails proving their relationship. You don't know me, and you don't owe me anything, but you do deserve to know the truth. A husband who knows. I attached the most damning photos, ones that left no room for doubt, and hit send. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. The first domino had fallen, and there was no going back. Emily and Jason thought they were invincible. They'd built their little fantasy world, safe in the belief that no one would ever uncover their lies. But their perfect world was about to come crashing down. Hard. The email had been sent, and there was no undoing it. I didn't know how long it would take for Rachel to see it, or what she would do once she did. But the wheels were already in motion. I expected radio silence for a few days, but things escalated faster than I could have imagined. The next evening, my phone buzzed while I was helping the kids with homework. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? There was a shaky breath on the other end. Is this Jack? I knew immediately. It was Rachel. Yes, I said carefully. This is Rachel, Jason's wife. Her voice trembled, like she was trying to hold it together. I got your email. I sat down, suddenly feeling the weight of what I'd done. I'm sorry you had to find out like that. I need to know. Is it all true? She asked, her voice cracking. The messages, the photos. Yes. There was no point sugarcoating it. It's all true. She let out a choked sob. For a moment, I thought she might hang up, but instead, she steadied herself. I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't know it was this. Her voice hardened with anger. Thank you for telling me. Before I could respond, she hung up. I sat there in stunned silence, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. I didn't regret what I'd done, but hearing Rachel's pain made it all more real. The next day, Emily was on edge. She paced the house like a caged animal, constantly checking her phone. I could see the unease settling into her bones, though she tried to hide it with forced smiles. By lunchtime, her phone rang, and I caught the name Jason flashing on the screen. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "Hey, what's up?" she said lightly, though her voice trembled just enough for me to notice. She listened in tense silence, her face draining of color as Jason's voice spilled out on the other end. She ended the call quickly, muttering something about needing to fix this. I watched her retreat upstairs, phone clutched like a lifeline. Checkmate. You lying witch. 2 days later, the real explosion hit. Jason's wife didn't just confront him, she went nuclear. Nick called me that afternoon, barely containing his amusement. "Did you see the neighborhood Facebook group?" I pulled it up immediately, and there it was. Rachel's post. "My husband, Jason Winters, has been having an affair with Emily unfaithful. I have proof. Ladies, keep your husbands away from these two lying, cheating homewreckers. They deserve each other." The post had already racked up dozens of comments, some sympathetic, others gleefully adding fuel to the fire. Rachel hadn't held back at all. She even attached photos. I let out a low whistle. She really went for it. Nick chuckled. "Your move, Jack." When Emily got home that evening, she looked shattered. I knew she'd seen the post. Everyone had. But she didn't know I was behind it. She paced the kitchen like a trapped animal, constantly glancing at her phone as messages and calls poured in. Finally, she snapped. "Jack, something happened." I feigned confusion. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, visibly panicking. "Jason's wife. Rachel. She's saying crazy things online. Accusing us of stuff." "Stuff." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Her face turned pale. She claims Jason and I were seeing each other." I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm. She couldn't meet my eyes. "Why would she say that, Emily?" I asked coldly. I don't know. She's crazy. Jason said she's unstable and she's making things up." She was spiraling now, throwing out desperate lies like a drowning woman grasping for air. "Really?" I said, stepping closer. "She made it all up, including the photos she posted online?" Emily flinched like I'd slapped her. Her eyes went wide with terror as she realized I knew. "Jack, I can explain." "No," I hissed, cutting her off. "You can't." For the first time, she was the one scrambling for control. She was the one on the defensive. And damn, it felt good. Emily stood there, frozen like a deer in headlights, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to form a coherent excuse. "Jack, please, it's not what you think," she stammered. "Not what I think." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Don't insult me, Emily. I've seen everything." Her face went from pale to ashen. She realized this wasn't just about Rachel's post. I had something much worse. "I was going to tell you. I swear," she whispered. "Really? When? After your next work trip? Or maybe after another cozy weekend at that cabin with Jason?" Her eyes widened in horror. How do you know about that?" "Gotcha." I stepped closer, lowering my voice into something cold and lethal. "You're done lying, Emily. I know about the cabin. I know about the motel. I know about the texts, the dinners, all of it." Her breath hitched as she realized just how deep I'd dug. The walls were closing in, and she had nowhere to run. "Jack, I was confused," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Confused?" My voice rose, trembling with barely restrained rage. "You destroyed our family for a fling. You betrayed me with my own cousin. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was lonely. We were drifting apart. You weren't there? Don't you dare put this on me." I roared, slamming my hand on the counter. She flinched, shrinking back like a cornered animal. "You made this choice. You didn't slip. You planned this." Her sobs turned into gasps as she crumpled into a chair, head in her hands. But I felt nothing. No pity. No mercy. "You have no idea how long I've known," I hissed. "Months, Emily. I watched you lie, Sneak around, thinking you were so clever. She lifted her tear-streaked face, desperation shining in her eyes. Jack, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Fix. I spat, laughing bitterly. There's nothing left to fix. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the folder labeled proof. Photos. Screenshots. Hotel reservations. Everything laid bare. I tossed the phone on the table in front of her. Take a good look at what you destroyed. With trembling fingers, she picked up the phone. Her breath came in short, broken gasps as she scrolled through the damning evidence. I didn't know you had all this, she whispered. You thought I was too dumb to figure it out, I snarled, echoing Jason's words. You both did. She stared at the screen, defeated, realizing how completely she'd been exposed. I leaned in, my voice low and deadly. This is what's going to happen, I said coldly. I'm filing for divorce. You will sign the papers without any resistance. She shook her head, still clinging to some delusional hope. Jack, please, for the kids. The kids? I snapped. You should have thought about them before screwing Jason in a motel. She let out a strangled sob, collapsing into herself. But I wasn't done. You will pack your things and leave this house by the end of the week, I continued. You'll get nothing but the car I paid for. Everything else stays with me. Jack, please, don't do this, she begged, her voice hoarse with desperation. I stepped back, crossing my arms. This is me being merciful. If you fight me, I'll show these photos to everyone. Your parents, our friends, the whole town. Her face crumpled, the last bit of defiance draining from her body. She knew I meant every word. You ruined this family, Emily, I said, voice steady. Now you get to live with it. Emily broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. But for the first time in months, I felt free. I turned, walking out of the kitchen, leaving her to drown in her guilt. The house was filled with the sound of her crying, but I didn't look back. The war was over. I'd won. I walked out of that kitchen feeling lighter, as if the crushing weight of her betrayal had finally been lifted. But there was no real relief, just a cold, hollow emptiness where love used to be. I sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the steering wheel, my hands trembling from the intensity of what had just happened. Her sobs still echoed faintly through the walls, but I didn't care. Let her cry. I'd spent months suffocating under the weight of her lies, drowning in the betrayal she crafted so meticulously. Now it was her turn. The next morning, I called Nick. It's done, I said flatly. Time to file. He didn't ask for details. Come by the office. We'll get everything started. By noon, the divorce papers were in progress, ironclad, with terms that left Emily with little more than her clothes and her car. She'd lose the house, shared savings, and any chance of custody unless she fought me, and I knew she wouldn't. Nick even managed to get a restraining order against Jason, ensuring he couldn't come near me or the kids. His face when he got served must have been priceless. 2 days later, the fallout spread like wildfire. Rachel's Facebook post went viral, not just in our town, but in surrounding communities. Everyone knew Jason was a cheater, and Emily wasn't just some woman. She was branded as that homewrecker. Jason's reputation tanked. He lost clients at his financial firm, and Rachel kicked him out, filing for divorce with a vicious lawyer I recommended. She made sure he'd walk away with nothing but regret. Back home, Emily barely spoke. She moved through the house like a ghost, packing in silence while the kids stayed with my parents. She didn't even try to argue about the divorce terms. I'd left her no ground to stand on. One night, I came home late and found her sitting alone in the dark living room, a half-empty wine glass trembling in her hand. Are you just going to hate me forever? She asked quietly, her voice cracked and small. I stared at her for a long time, searching for any trace of the woman I'd loved, the one I thought she'd been. But all I saw was a stranger wrapped in regret too late to matter. I don't hate you, I said coldly. I nothing you. Her breath hitched, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't stay to watch. I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her with her shattered world. On Friday, she was gone. No tearful farewell, no begging for forgiveness. Just an empty closet and a neatly folded note on the kitchen counter. Jack, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. Not for me, but for yourself. I'm so sorry for everything. Emily. I stared at the note for what felt like hours, numb to its hollow apology. I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash without a second thought. The first night alone in the house was deafeningly quiet. No lies. No fake smiles. No betrayal lurking in the shadows. Just silence. I slept like a rock for the first time in months. The kids came home the next day, and I did my best to create something resembling normalcy. Soccer games, movie nights, bedtime stories, simple, honest moments that couldn't be tainted by her lies. I wasn't healed, but I was moving forward. Slowly. Weeks passed. One night, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jack, it's Jason. The sound of his voice made my skin crawl. What the hell do you want? I snapped. Look, I lost everything, man. Rachel, my job, everything. He sounded hollow, broken in a way that might have once stirred pity, but not anymore. Good, I said icily. There was a long silence before he spoke again. I never meant for this to happen. It just got out of hand. I clenched my teeth, my grip tightening on the phone. You chose this. You knew what you were doing. Jack, I hung up before he could finish. A few weeks later, I heard Emily had moved into a cheap apartment on the other side of town. She worked part-time at a local boutique, far from the life she'd once lived. Jason was living out of his car. And me? I was free. The betrayal would always be a scar, but it didn't define me anymore. I'd walked through the fire and survived. Months passed. Life slowly settled into something that resembled normal. The kids adjusted better than I expected, helped by the fact that Emily and I kept communication to a minimum. Her weekly visits were strictly scheduled, and we only spoke about the kids. She was polite, almost mechanical, her once bright personality dulled by the weight of her actions. I should have felt some satisfaction seeing her so broken, but all I felt was emptiness. One Friday evening, Nick convinced me to grab drinks at a new downtown bar. I hadn't gone out in months. My world had shrunk to work, the kids, and my house. It was time. We sat at the bar, sipping whiskey, talking about anything but Emily or the past. For the first time in forever, I laughed, really laughed. That's when Leah walked in. She was tall, with dark auburn hair that caught the dim bar lights just right. She moved with quiet confidence, chatting with the bartender like she belonged there. Nick caught my expression and smirked. Go talk to her. Absolutely not, I scoffed, shaking my head. It's too soon. Man, if you wait until it feels right, you'll be alone forever. Before I could argue, Leah glanced my way. Just a brief flicker of interest, but enough to stir something I hadn't felt in a long time. Against my better judgment, I walked over. Hey, I'm Jack. Her lips curved into a slow smile. Leah. We talked, and it felt easy. No games, no baggage, just two people having a genuine conversation. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly real. We exchanged numbers before the night ended, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something close to hope. 2 weeks later, Emily texted me out of the blue. Emily, we need to talk. I ignored it at first, assuming it was about the kids. But the messages kept coming, desperate, erratic, laced with apologies and half-finished thoughts. Then came the phone call. Jack, please. I need to talk to you. Her voice trembled, cracked with desperation. I sighed, stepping outside where the kids couldn't hear. What's going on? I made a mistake, she whispered. I miss you. I miss us. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Us? There is no us, Emily. I've changed. I'm getting help. I'm better now. Better? She still didn't get it. There's no coming back from what you did, I said coldly. You made your choice. Her breath hitched. Jack, please, just give me one more chance. No, my voice was steady, resolute. Go fix your life, Emily. But you don't get to drag me down with you again. I hung up, feeling nothing. No anger. No pity. Just closure. Later that week, Leah and I met for coffee. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. She didn't pry into my past or push me to explain the scars I carried. She just listened. As the evening stretched on, she rested her hand lightly on mine, her touch warm and grounding. "You seem like someone who's been through a lot," she said softly. "But you're still here." I met her gaze, realizing for the first time that maybe, just maybe, I could be more than the wreckage Emily left behind. Leah and I kept seeing each other, slowly, cautiously. No rush, no expectations. It was easy. She was kind, thoughtful, and so refreshingly different from everything I'd known before. With her, there were no mind games, no suspicion gnawing at the edges of every conversation. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Just when life seemed to settle into something steady, Emily reappeared, like a ghost refusing to be forgotten. One evening, after dropping the kids off at my house, she lingered in the driveway, nervously twisting her wedding ring. Why was she still wearing it? "Jack, can we talk?" she asked quietly. I folded my arms. "We've got nothing left to say." She looked down, voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I'm trying to be better." "Good," I said flatly. "For yourself, not for me." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I miss what we had, before everything fell apart." I took a slow breath, forcing calm into my voice. "You destroyed what we had, Emily. You burned it to the ground, and now you're standing here wondering why there's nothing left." Her face crumpled. I thought, maybe we could try again someday. I shook my head slowly. "We're done. We've been done." Her breath hitched as she stepped back, crushed by the finality of it. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. I watched her leave, feeling nothing. The woman I'd loved was long gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Later that night, Leah texted, "Leah, hope you're surviving your Monday. Drinks on me this week?" Her message made me smile, a small but real flicker of warmth. "Me? Absolutely." Thursday? That Thursday, we met at the same bar where we'd first talked. I told her about Emily. Not the gritty details, but enough for her to understand the fractured pieces I was still piecing together. She listened without judgment, her fingers lightly tracing mine across the table. "You're allowed to let go, Jack," she said softly. "She can't hurt you anymore." Her words settled deep in my chest, loosening something I hadn't realized I was still holding on to. Maybe she was right. Maybe moving on wasn't just about cutting Emily out of my life, but about letting Leah in. 2 weeks later, I got a final letter from Emily, handwritten, the ink smudged like she cried while writing it. I debated tossing it unread, but curiosity won. "Jack, I'm not writing this to beg or plead for forgiveness. I know I lost you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But you should know, I'm leaving town. I can't stay here, not with the memories of what I ruined. I loved you once, more than I ever thought possible. I just didn't realize how much until I'd already destroyed everything. Take care of the kids and yourself. Emily." I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer without another thought. Her leaving didn't change anything, but maybe it was the closure we both needed. Leah and I grew closer with time. Not in a whirlwind romance, but something deeper, steadier. She never pushed, never demanded anything I couldn't give, and because of that, I wanted to give her more. One evening, after a quiet dinner at her place, she turned to me with a soft smile. "You seem lighter," she said, "like you're finally breathing again." I met her gaze, realizing she was right. I am. For the first time in years, I wasn't defined by betrayal or bitterness. I wasn't trapped in the ruins of what Emily had done. I was free, and for the first time, I was ready for whatever came next. The months after Emily left felt like waking up after a long, brutal winter. Life wasn't perfect, but it was finally mine. No lies, no double lives. Just me, my kids, and the steady, growing presence of Leah. We didn't rush into anything. We built slowly, carefully, each moment feeling earned rather than forced. She understood that my past wasn't something I could just get over. She never asked me to forget, just to try living again. One rainy Saturday, Leah came over to cook dinner. It felt domestic, something I hadn't thought I'd ever want again. As we stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and laughing about some ridiculous cooking video she'd shown me, she suddenly paused. "Jack," she said quietly, "am I too much? I know this hasn't been easy." I set down the knife and turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're not too much," I said softly. "You're exactly enough." Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but she smiled, real, bright, and hers. Weeks later, fate tested me again. I was grocery shopping with the kids when I turned a corner, and there she was, Emily. She looked different, thinner, more fragile, like the past year had carved lines into her face that hadn't been there before. Her eyes widened when she saw me, flicking from me to the kids, who were laughing and picking out snacks. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she whispered, "Jack, hey." I nodded stiffly. "Emily." She shifted awkwardly, clutching her empty basket. You look good." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Her gaze softened when she looked at the kids. "They've gotten so big. You're doing a great job." I nodded again, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "Take care, Emily." Before she could respond, I turned and walked away, my kids trailing behind me. My world intact, her place in it long gone. One evening, after dinner at Leah's place, we sat outside on her small deck, wrapped in blankets as the stars blinked lazily overhead. "I saw Emily," I admitted, breaking the peaceful silence. Leah tensed slightly but didn't interrupt. She looked small, like she finally understood what she'd lost. She rested her hand on mine. "How did it feel?" I thought about it for a long time. Like closure. Her fingers tightened around mine. "I'm glad." We sat quietly, the night stretching gently around us. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a noose around my neck, just something I'd lived through. Months passed. Life settled into something better than I'd ever thought possible. The kids adored Leah, and she treated them with the same quiet love and patience she'd shown me. One crisp autumn afternoon, while we were all carving pumpkins in the backyard, I caught her laughing with my daughter, both of them covered in pumpkin guts. I realized, this is what love is supposed to feel like. Not possession, not control, just belonging. One cool winter evening, I found myself standing in Leah's kitchen as she put the last touches on dinner. The kids were upstairs, arguing over board games, their laughter filling the house. I walked up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist. She smiled, leaning into me with a contented sigh. "Jack," she murmured. "Yeah." She turned in my arms, her eyes shining with quiet certainty. "I love you." My heart clenched, but not with fear. This time, I was ready. "I love you too." Life with Leah felt like stepping into the light after years spent stumbling in the dark. We didn't need grand declarations or elaborate promises, just quiet, steady love built on mutual respect and trust. Emily faded further into the background with each passing day. Her scheduled visits with the kids became less frequent until, eventually, she moved out of state for a fresh start. There was no tearful goodbye, just a short, impersonal email letting me know she'd left. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or relief, just closure. Her chapter in my life was finally, truly over. One snowy evening, after tucking the kids into bed, Leah and I sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa and sharing stories from our pasts. I told her about the early days with Emily, the good memories I'd buried under the weight of betrayal. "I guess I thought love was supposed to be hard," I admitted, "like something you had to fight for every second." Leah reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. "Love is work," she said softly, "but it shouldn't feel like a battle. It should feel like home. Home." I realized then that she was my home, our home. Spring came slowly, melting the last of winter's chill. On a quiet Sunday morning, the kids played in the backyard while Leah and I prepared breakfast together, laughter filling every corner of the house. As I watched her sprinkle powdered sugar over the pancakes, something clicked. This life, our life, felt like more than just healing. It felt right. "Hey," I said, my voice low. She glanced up, smiling. "Hey yourself." Before I could second-guess myself, I pulled a small velvet box from my pocket and held it out to her. Her breath hitched as her eyes widened. Jack? I'm not asking for perfect, I said, my voice steady. I'm just asking for forever. With you. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, laughing through her sobs. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. I slipped the ring onto her finger, my heart finally free from the past, open to a future built on trust, love, and second chances. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the sound of our kids' laughter echoing through the house. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was meant to be.